here in Canada, we had some unfortunate news with someone I know. Mark McEwen had a grocery store and he had a restaurant business, and he went into protection. He declared bankruptcy. Now he got unlucky. One of his biggest locations where he put a lot of money into for the store easily opened up down the block, and then it was in a big office building / residential. And of course, all the office people disappeared. So just a victim of bad timing. He's a great restaurateur and operator. Now, but what struck me was, and it's something you mentioned as well, is we don't really haven't heard a lot about retail bankruptcies. They've kind of gone quiet. Is this the calm before the storm? Welcome to the Remarkable Retail Podcast, Season 3, Episode 11. This one's going to 11, Steve.
Ooh.
I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm Steve Dennis. Unfortunately, I suspect it is. So there were quite a lot of retail bankruptcies even before the pandemic. And then the first year of the pandemic, we saw a pretty big uptick, both with big retailers like Penny's and Neiman Marcus and others, as well as small ones. And kind of the same... I guess, trend in store closings. But this interesting thing happened that instead of all the store closings that were predicted, I think we talked about a couple of weeks ago, Coresight predicted 25,000 store closings last year, ended up being more like 8,000. Green Street Advisors predicted that half the mall anchors in the U.S. would close within 2 years. And so we've got about 12 weeks for hundreds of stores to be shuttered. So I don't think that's very likely to happen.
I don't think that's on the horizon.
And then similarly, I think, the pace of bankruptcies has really slowed and it surprised people. What I think is going on is two things. One, which is more perhaps profound perspective, is I do think one of the things that has happened by virtue of COVID is more retailers have come to appreciate the role of stores in all their business, the curbside pickup, the ship from store. So I think there is actually where the narrative, as we've talked about before, was, well, online's growing and that really comes at the expense of physical retail. That is certainly sometimes true. But what's been true for a lot of retailers is that they actually need their physical stores to make digital work. So I think there is this realization, and that's kind of, caused people to maybe tap on the brakes a little bit in terms of store closing. The thing that I think is more of a near-term phenomenon is both at least in the US, the amount of government stimulus that has propped up spending, which will eventually be less of an issue. And then the second thing is, as we came into this year, a lot of the retailers that had terrible 2020s were starting to see improvement. And they were starting to, some of this, again, is a function of the stimulus. Some of it's a function of pent-up demand. And some of it is like, let's just see how this plays out. So I think there was a lot of the people, the banks or others that might have forced people, or landlords that might have forced people into protection. The ones that were already on the edge filed last year. The ones that are on the edge now, I think it's more of a wait and see attitude.
Right.
So I suspect when we get into, and the holidays are coming up, back to school. So it's not a great time to try to force store closings or force bankruptcies. But we get on the other side, it'll be a little bit more clear who the winners and losers are. We'll have, I think, a more normal perspective of what the retail trends look like.
Yeah, right on. I mean, and it's not unusual during our career over the years that Q1 is the time when retailers go into protection, right? I mean,
yes.
I didn't have a great holiday, so that was going to be my last savior. Or B, I was kind of planning to do it anyway, but I might as well liquidate all my inventory, get through holiday, and then in Q1, wrap it up and move on.
I haven't seen, I haven't gone out to look for or particularly seen the stats as to the seasonality of store closings and bankruptcies. But yes, my general impression is, 3/4 to 90% happen in the 2 or 3 months after the holiday.
I do think under it's kind of a little bit of an iceberg, I bet. I don't have data to back this up, but I think there's at the high level brands we know stable, but I think below that, there's a lot of small indies who are declaring bankruptcy and or just throwing in the towel, right? Because I know here in Canada, the tourism is And it's the same. I was reading an article about Manhattan and Soho, right? 40 stores are vacant, which is unheard of in that
Yeah.
shopping district. And if you run a business that survives on tourism or office workers,
Mm.
you're probably, maybe you're a small indie. You probably either cashed your chips in, or I think there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and I think that's going to continue, unfortunately, because I don't think office
Yeah.
workers are going to come streaming back in January. So I think there's going to be a reckoning for sure. So it's a good thing for us to keep
Yeah.
our eyes on.
That's my sense, and it doesn't get as much visibility. The other thing that I think could be interesting and also unfortunate is with all these supply chain challenges, the retailers that are best positioned to, aside from just maybe strong balance sheets, but either control more of their own distribution or can afford to pay
Yeah,
premiums, those are the big retailers. So I think we'll see a disproportionate kind of pattern of success this holiday. It'll be more
mm.
concentrated among the big retailers that can control their destiny more or absorb these premium prices. That's a lot harder for the smaller guys to withstand.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get on with the rest of the show. The back half of the show, we got Robbie Kelman Baxter talking about subscriptions, and it's a wonderful interview. So let's have a listen.